Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Super pumped to have you here. So today we have the long-awaited Deathwish board review, and I'm super excited to finally get this board review to you guys. A lot of viewers have been requesting it, and I got one. I skated it, so I know everything I want to say, what I noticed about it. I'm going to share that with you. But before we get into that, I do have some updates about what's going on, and I might put a time in here so you can skip this part if you want to go straight to the review. But you guys might notice we are back in my regular recording area. So as some of you may know who follow me on Instagram, my basement flooded, and that's where I keep all my skate stuff and all my equipment and stuff. So a lot of that was ruined, but everything's finished now and it's done, and we are back up and running just how I want it to be. Another thing I want to update you guys on is I just set up a new board today. This is a Manny Santiago Pro model from Fortune. Super cool board. A viewer actually recommended that I try this board, so I ordered one and it is awesome. So I have my first session on it today. I was able to break it in a little bit. So if you want to hear a review on this board, leave a comment down below and we can do that possibly in the future because this board looks super cool. But I'm riding this on Tensor Maglite trucks. These are Matt Berger Pro Model Bones wheels, Oust bearings, and then we have Mob Motorhead grip tape. I love Mob grip tape. It's the grippiest, very hard to get air bubbles with it, and it cuts really nice, and this Motorhead graphic just looks awesome. So that's the board that I am currently riding. So now let's get into the Deathwish review. So here is the Deathwish skateboard. This is an 8.25 Deathwish board, and this measured actually a little bit above 31.5 length. This was actually 31.7 that I measured, and I did it a couple times. So 8.25, 31.7 length, and this is just a regular team deck Deathwish board, and we had a shake junk grip tape, of course. Jamie Foy also rides for Deathwish, so I figured if we're gonna ride a Deathwish board, we might as well throw a shake junk grip on here. So let's talk a little bit about Deathwish first. One of my favorite skaters, Jim Greco, rides for Deathwish. Also Jamie Foy, who is Skater of the Year, he kills it, and he's on Deathwish, and same with Eric Ellington. They have an awesome team of some very talented skaters, and there's a lot of things that I noticed about this board, and I do want to say this, if you didn't know, Deathwish and Baker come out of the same distribution, so it is the same lumber, but there is some significant differences I actually noticed about Deathwish and Baker. So think about this as more of a comparison to Baker, but Deathwish boards, the first thing I noticed, they are extremely light. This is probably one of the lightest boards I had, and this is, I also skate Tensor Maglite, so this was an extremely light setup. It's like the wind would blow and it would take the board away. Not even really kidding. It's an extremely light board. I didn't actually measure it when it wasn't cut up, but yeah, it is extremely light, and you could feel when you just skate them that they are light. Another thing that I do want to mention that is extremely strange is the slide marks on the graphic. Now, this is just kind of weird and something that I noticed. You might know that there's not that many slide marks. And if we look at the board that I set up today, there's already more slide marks on it than this Deathwish board. And I did a lot of board sides and stuff on this deck, which is kind of confusing why there's not many marks. So that's not a pro or con anything. It was just something I noticed, that there's not many slide marks. I guess these graphics are the real deal. Now, another thing I noticed about Deathwish is that this was one of the steeper boards that I've had. So I've had 3 Deathwish boards. 2 of them were pro models, and this is the first team deck. And it has been a while since I've ridden a Deathwish board, but these are extremely steep kicks on here with a more flatter, I don't know what you call it, more flatter middle part, but the kicks, the nose, the tail, they are extremely steep. The tail is not quite as steep as the nose as you would expect, but yeah, this is no issue for flip tricks. The weight is very light, and there is a lot of room for you to flick your board all over the place. So super cool on that aspect, because I was expecting more of a flatter type of feel, especially when I get to buying Baker boards and Deathwish boards. You expect something a little bit more flatter. I do know that Baker makes the steep kicks and the mellow boards, but yeah, this was definitely a steeper board, and I was not expecting that. Now, there is one big con that I've noticed about Deathwish and Baker when I've ridden them in the past, and that is, my God, do they razor tail easily. So this one, I was doing some manuals on this board, but realistically, I've never had a board razor tail this fast. This happened extremely quickly. I was seeing signs of it that it went through like the second, third ply within the first week of setting it up, which is extremely uncommon for me. I pop the board usually pretty much correctly, and shoves and stuff like that shouldn't do that much damage to it. So yeah, the tail razored pretty quickly, but it wasn't a huge deal breaker for me. Everything was still snappy on this board through the whole time I skated it, and yeah, there was no defects in this board at all. Even if you look at the bolt holes, there's not really any pressure cracks. So the board stayed strong. It's just the tail razored pretty quickly, but who knows? It could be user error, but that is something I do want to mention. So another thing is I had no significant chips in this board throughout skating it, and I skated this for 27 days exactly. So no chips or anything on this board, which is pretty cool, because Baker board I had in the past, during the first week I got a massive chip in it, but this one stayed strong, and there was a lot of instances where I think a lot of other brands would have chipped. So this one, great on that front. Now, there is something else I need to mention, and that is the bolt holes. They did sink in a little bit, and that is just a sign of a little bit softer wood, or if you screw your bolts in with a drill, they can do that, but I always do it by hand to avoid this exact thing. But you can maybe see there that they did sink in, and that will happen over time, especially if you change your trucks or if you're tightening the bolts on your trucks a lot. But no, that just kind of happened right away. The bolts started sinking in, and I try very carefully to avoid that. It is one of my pet peeves, but that did happen with this. So the last thing I want to touch on when it comes to Deathwish is the pop. So I did mention that it razor-tailed kind of significantly for the amount of time I skated it, but it stayed snappy for the most part. It wasn't something that I had constantly going through my mind while I was having a session or trying tricks. So on that front, it didn't bother me too much, but it was there. And if you skate your boards for a very significant amount of time, like, you know, you go through a board maybe every 2 to 3 months, then that is something to keep in mind, because I wasn't, you know, skating a lot of manuals. I was doing manuals, but not, you know, more than usual. And as far as shoves and other types of tricks, that would cause this friction no more than I would on any other setup I had. So that is something to keep in mind. But other than that, there isn't too much to really say on this board. The graphics stayed strong. The board didn't chip on me. The board actually isn't even flexing. Has steep kicks to it with a more flatter center of the board. And yeah, no chips in this. But there is some razor tail, and it did sink in a little here. So those are the pros and cons I can tell you about Deathwish boards. If you guys have any more questions about this board, or even the grip tape or the trucks and wheels I showed you earlier, feel free to ask them in the comments. I'll answer any of your guys' questions. But all in all, I would definitely skate another Deathwish again. This was a good board, and I'm happy that I did give it another chance for this review, because I did enjoy skating this while I had it. Anyways, guys, if you want to see any boards reviewed in the future, feel free to leave them down in the comments below. And so you know, I do listen to the viewers. I did pick up a Manny Santiago Fortune board because of a comment somebody left. So I will definitely hear about all the boards you want to hear me review, or just skate products in general. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Keep skating, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.